Hey friends, this is Darnell coming to you from the beautiful Bedrock Ministry studio as we march forward with America in Bible prophecy. Now we will be picking up today in this lesson where we left off on the last one. I do hope that you're following along with the videos underneath the prophetic teaching videos tab of AmericaInBibleProphecy.com. It's very important that you follow along through all these videos to really work off of this foundation that we've been building to get an accurate picture of what is going on. Now, we've been discussing two battles that are going on in the world today. They're battles really against ideologies, and they're happening on two fronts. We've got a battle happening on the political front between capitalism and communism, which we discussed last week, and we've got a battle happening on the religious front between the two largest religions in the world right now, which are Catholicism and Islam. Now, we know that these four ideologies, if you will, are really what the first four seals in the book of Revelation. There's 7 total seals, and the first 4 seals, which use symbolism to describe these 4 ideologies, that's where they're represented primarily in the scriptures. These ideologies were released according to Revelation chapter 6 verse 1 by Jesus himself subsequent to his crucifixion and resurrection. Now, what I'm trying to deal with on the last video and this one is to kind of give you more of an idea of what to expect going forward. We've already looked at the clues given to us in the scriptures, or at least some of them, not all of them, but we certainly looked at the ones given in Revelation chapter 6 as well as in Zechariah chapter 6. To establish that those first 4 seals, represented by what are commonly known as the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, are in fact these 4 ideologies that I just mentioned. Once again, on the political side, communism and capitalism; on the religious side, Catholicism and Islam. Now, you may still have some doubts as to whether for example, the white horse on the first seal represents Catholicism. I want to share with you now that there are more clues that I have not shared with you that we will certainly get into going forward in Revelation 13 and Revelation 17 and Revelation 18. But I'm not going to go into them in this video because, once again, my purpose for this video, as was in the last one, is to give you a more of a picture of what to expect. If we've got 2 battles going on, as I said last time, there has to end up being one predominant ideology that rises to the top on the political side, and one predominant religion that rises to the top on the religious side, because ultimately there will be a one world government and a one world religion, and it will be the job of the false prophet to bring the one world to bring the religious world, if you will, under the submission of the Antichrist and fall in line with the one world government, so that they all become one entity, so to speak. So with this battle going on in 2 fronts, and knowing that only one will rise to the top, that's really the subject that I'm dealing with today. Now, last week we established that ultimately it's communism that will rule the world government. But again, I will say that doesn't mean that capitalism will completely go away, and that doesn't mean that every nation of the world will fall in line with that one world government and be subject to the dictatorship of the Antichrist. The Bible clearly teaches that some won't. I believe the Bible clearly teaches that the United States will not, that Jordan will not, and others. But this week I want to move over to the religious front and talk about these 2 dominant religious forces in the world today, Catholicism and Islam, and sort of start to talk about how that's going to unfold going forward. So we know that Islam pursues its dominance through force. That is no great secret. As I said once before, Islam actually means submission. And if you really were to go in, which I realize a lot of people have not, but if you actually read some of the verses in the Quran, you would know what their ideology is. And if you listen to some of the propaganda and the speaking of radical Islam, you recognize very quickly that they have every intention of ruling the world, even if it means killing off the infidels. They have no tolerance for those that don't follow the teachings of Muhammad and fall in line with Islam. So no question that their quest for world dominance is primarily fought through force. Now, Catholicism is much more subtle and a lot more complex and convoluted than it is with Islam. Catholicism is pursuing world dominance, but they're pursuing it through influence and to some degree manipulation, if I'm being honest. Now, once again, I want to say what I've been saying several times all along, that this is not a judgment against all Catholics. I realize that probably most Catholics have no knowledge of the things that I'm talking about. They don't even really realize where their religion is in the Bible. And I would argue once again that there are born-again Catholics and there are unborn-again Catholics, just like there are born-again Protestants and those within the Protestant religions that do not know the Lord. So this is a statement about Roman Catholicism and the head and what is going on through the Vatican and what we can expect going forward. So again, their pursuit of world dominance comes through influence. They do this in a couple of different ways. You may have noticed, if you have been listening to any of the speeches or reading any of the material that this current Pope Francis has been putting out, you may recognize that they have taken a turn. This Pope is, and others in the past as well have injected themselves into the political forum, but with each Pope that comes along, there is more of an injection into the political realm. This Pope is very involved in the political realm, and that is very significant with regard to tying into Bible prophecy. So the other way, other than political involvement, another way that they are pursuing their world dominance is through social appeal. So let me just sort of break down what's going on here. We're going to have a one world religion. Now, right now, as I said, the two dominant religions in the world are Catholicism and Islam. And then you've got Christianity, which it depends on how you're defining Christianity. There are some that would define Christianity as including all of Catholicism and all of Protestantism, including evangelicals, the whole ball of wax. And that is a big number. If you count it that way, you would say, well, that's the largest. That's like 2.2 billion or so people. But if you separate Catholicism from the Protestants, well, now you've just about cut that in half, which is what makes Islam the largest and fastest growing religion. So that's one way of defining Christianity. Another way of defining Christianity, depending on who you ask, is to just talk about the Protestant arm. Okay, there are some Catholics. I have been in conversations and heard of conversations where actual people that call themselves Catholics say, well, you Christians believe this and that. So in their minds, even they see sort of a separation there. And then so you've got that definition of Christianity, which is all of the Protestant religions, whether we're talking about Methodists and Lutherans and Baptists, and you could just name them all off. There's a whole bunch of them. And in case you're not familiar with how that happened, there was a reformation that happened when the Protestant arm of Christianity, if you will, separated from Roman Catholicism because they adopted a philosophy of being saved by faith. So, or righteous by faith is probably a more accurate way to put it. So that brought this separation. Well, as I said once before, Catholicism, the Roman Catholics and the Vatican already consider themselves the mother of all these other religions. In other words, of all the Protestant denominations, they sort of consider themselves the mother of them. And they are moving to bring not only all the Protestant religions back into the fold, but in fact, they're moving to bring all religions into unity across the earth. But let's break those two down for a minute. So their efforts to bring all Protestant religions back into the fold is done because now they have changed their views. Now they say, well, yeah, now we accept justification through faith. So they're now saying, okay, we now there's nothing to separate us. There's nothing to divide us now between the doctrine of the Protestant denomination. So we can come back together. And in fact, many popular and well-known pastors and reverends within the Protestant arm of Christianity are saying, yeah, I think it is time that we come together. This is where we have to be very careful, by the way, and I will be addressing that in videos to come, but I don't want to get too far off. I'm just kind of painting you a picture of what's going on, this movement that's going on in the world. So while that is going on, now you've also got a move by the Vatican and by Roman Catholicism to sort of spearhead the effort to bring not only all Christian denominations together, but all religions together. So we currently have meetings going on in the world where you've got Muslim leaders and Buddhist leaders and just all religions all over the world that are coming together saying, hey, it's time that we have these interfaith meetings and try to get a coalition going. It's a serious, real effort to bring all religions together, because everybody recognizes that war is not great for anybody, and that two of the greatest causes for war have always been political differences and religious differences. So that is what's going on. This move to form a one world religion and then ultimately a one world government is definitely happening right before our eyes. If you aren't aware of it, it's just because you're not looking in the right places, because it's going on all over the world. So Catholicism, is pursuing its dominance through political involvement, through social appeal. Once again, if you just listen to some of the things that are coming out of the Vatican and coming specifically from this Pope, he is very much a believer in this theory of climate change and how that should motivate and move us towards globalism, which again is in stark contrast to a sovereign nation state like we have and have had so far. This Pope is very much open and pursuing a one world government. Socialism, social causes. Now, this is why it's so tricky and so subtle, because a lot of these on the surface sound good. They sound like, well, this is a pope that cares about humanity. He cares about the poor. He cares about the climate. He cares about, social justice and all these things. So it appeals to a lot of people because that is where Socialism and even communism has always had its appeal because it has this sort of face of being for the ones that are left out. The problem is that it just doesn't work. Number one, history has shown that, and number two, the reason that it doesn't work is primarily because of the evil that's in man's heart. There has to be a group, even within a communistic structure, that rules and sets the rules and enforces the rules. And the greed sets in and the power sets in and all these things. And so what you end up having is this small nucleus group that has all the power, and then the masses that have none and end up being very poor. That's another story for another day. But back to Catholicism and how it's pursuing dominance, those are the primary ways. Through political involvement, social appeal, which is aligning itself with climate change, globalism, socialism, religious unity, and religious compromise. This effort to bring all religions together and say, hey, we can all just kind of come together and agree and be this world religion. Unfortunately, that just doesn't work if you're a Bible believer, because the Bible is very set. It says, for example, that Jesus said the only way to the Father is through me. There is only one way to the Father, which ultimately means there's only one way to heaven, and that is through Christ. It's through the Savior. Well, that doesn't work if you're trying to bring all these world religions together and sort of adopting this philosophy that, hey, all paths lead to God. Even the New Age movement says that. So, of course, that's an appealing sort of stance and doctrine. If you don't want to, believe in the Bible, and you just kind of want to think, adopt this mentality that, hey, it really doesn't matter what we believe as long as we're sort of all living together in peace and nobody's rocking the boat. Believe what you want, God will be okay with it in the end. Well, that sounds really good and it sounds really appealing. The problem is that that's not what God said, and that's not what His Word said. So ultimately, we know that in the end, God will have His way, and the wise man will conform to God's way and not try to expect God to conform to his. So that is what we're seeing going on in Catholicism. Now let's talk again, let's go back to this battle for dominance. Who will rise to the top? Well, we know through studying Revelation chapters 17 and 18 that Catholicism is going to be the world religion. This effort to bring, quote unquote, all religions together under one umbrella will succeed for the most part. Now, obviously, it will not include evangelicals, born-again Christians that see what's going on and do not fall in line with that one world religion. And that's where the rub is going to happen, my friends. If you want to start to paint a picture of what to expect going forward, let me just lay it out for you very simply. There is coming a time when the true followers of Jesus Christ, true Christianity, Bible believers that hold true to the scriptures will be the outcast. And the one world religion and the one world religious leaders, and including the one world government, will persecute the true church. And many will be killed. That's what the Bible teaches. We'll get into that more. We've already talked about it in previous videos a little bit, but I'll get back into that in future videos. But make no mistake, there is a great persecution coming, not only against the true church, the bride of Christ, but against the Jewish people. So we're starting to see things sift out and take shape and kind of know where we're going. Now, how does that play into this battle with Islam? Because while all that's going on, we see Islam trying to gain world dominance through force. Well, to understand that, we have to go to Revelation chapter 9 and to the sixth trumpet. Now, remember, in Revelation, you've got 7 seals. We've already looked at 1 through 4 quite extensively. We know that 6 and 7 is the Battle of Armageddon and the second coming of Christ. And I haven't talked a whole lot about the 5th seal yet, but we're in that arena right there. Now, there's also 7 trumpets, which have been, some of them have already been sounded. I want to jump to the 6th trumpet, and I want to read this passage for you from verse 13 in Revelation 9, verse 13 through 19. Listen to this. It says, "Then the 6th angel blew his trumpet, and I heard a voice from the 4 horns of the golden altar before God, saying to the 6th angel who had the trumpet, release the 4 angels who are bound at the great river Euphrates." So the 4 angels who had been prepared for the hour, the day, the month, and the year were released to kill 1/3 of mankind. Now let me just stop right there for a moment. This is the World War III. This is the 6th trumpet war that is coming, and coming quickly. Make no mistake about this, my friends. And in that little short couple verses that I read, it gives us some serious clues. It says, release the 4 angels who are bound at the great river Euphrates. Right now, the Euphrates is right in the Middle East, and over 90% of that whole stretch that marches through 4 different nations of the Euphrates is under Islamic control. The 6th trumpet war, the World War III, will actually originate right there out of the area of the Euphrates. And this war will kill, as it says right there, it will kill 1/3 of mankind. Now, we've got 7.4 roughly billion people on the earth. So we're talking about, 2.4 or so billion people that will die in the 6th trumpet war. I know that that's probably a shock to your senses if you've never heard such a thing, but it's coming. Let me just go on and read the rest of this passage through verse 19. The number of mounted troops was twice 10,000 times 10,000, which is 200,000. So he's saying 200,000 troops. I heard their number. And this is how I saw the horses in my vision and those who rode them. They wore breastplates the color of fire and of sapphire and of sulfur, and the heads of the horses were like lions' heads, and fire and smoke and sulfur came out of their mouths. By these 3 plagues, 1/3 of mankind was killed. Excuse me. What is he describing there? Remember that these words were written by John in a time before we had any of the technological advances or armaments of warfare that we have today. So he's describing them in the best terms he can, but what he's really talking about is the armaments that we know exist in the world today. The point is that this battle has the ability and will in fact kill 1/3 of the population of the world. So okay, so let's break this down. So we've got a war coming that's going to culminate out of the Euphrates, out of the Middle East, that's going to kill 1/3 of mankind. Well, how does that tie into this battle that's going on between Catholicism and Islam? Well, Islam actually it's part of their belief system, and I don't have the time to go into all the proofs with you, but it's part of their belief system that the West, as they call them, are going to, now it's not just us, that's, huge Europe and a lot of other places, but it's going to be drawn in. They actually want to draw the West into a conflict in the Middle East. Why would they? Because they believe that when that conflict happens, that's when their Savior is going to appear on the earth. Now, So that's the ticket for them. Right now, on the next video, I'm about out of time, but on the next video, I am going to dive into the next sort of subject in sequence that I'm taking you down, which is to talk about the two things that we are on the verge of right now. But I'll mention them to you for now, just as a little bit of a teaser. One of them is the peace treaty that we're on the verge of seeing get signed between the Palestinians and the Jews, which is actually the confirmation of the covenant and the start of the final 7 years prior to the second coming of Christ. That peace treaty we're on the verge of, but we're also on the verge of this sixth trumpet war. Which one will come first and which one will follow? The scriptures do not tell us definitively, therefore I cannot tell you definitively, but I am able to lay out a couple of possible scenarios for you that make sense when you take all of this into consideration, knowing that Roman Catholicism will rise to the top and as the head and the embodiment of the one world religion. Knowing that that's the case, it's pretty easy to kind of get some clues as to what we can expect to see going forward. So I am going to leave it there for now. I'm about out of time. I invite you to come back on Monday's lesson, because we're going to continue to march down this road of the prophetic timeline. Listen, I hope you're finding this helpful. Go back, as I said, and review the videos up to this point, because I know I'm throwing a lot at you and it takes a minute to let it all soak in. Hey, this is Darnell coming to you from the beautiful Bedrock Ministry studio. Now let's go change the day.